In 2001, the Ontario legislature unanimously passed the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act to ensure that this unique landscape would be protected against unbridled development. But here we are, 10 years later, and the moraine is still in need of protection. The organization Save the Oak Ridges Moraine, aka STORM, along with Earthroots in Ontario Nature, have launched the Moraine Can't Wait campaign to bring attention to what they have identified as 5 key assaults that continue to undermine the integrity of Ontario's rain barrel. When the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act became legislation, it was in large part due to the lobbying of concerned citizens who had a voice through organizations like the Storm Coalition, Earthroots, and Ontario Nature. And the legislation did in fact help control the sprawling development happening on the moraine. The conservation plan divided the moraine into 4 designated land uses that was meant to protect the natural heritage and hydrological function of the moraine and to focus and contain urban development. In fact, only 8% of the entire 160-kilometer range is designated for settlement. But development is still occurring outside of that 8% because of grandfathered or transitional development projects that were submitted and approved before the legislation was passed. This key assault is a major problem, for one, because it isn't clear how many of these grandfathered developments there are.
It is in the places, in those areas around settlement areas like Maple, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, maybe some Uxbridge. There are kind of that fringe area of which there are probably quite a few of these transition applications. These are farms in transition. The people who are farming them know that this land is going to be under development, so there's no sense of ownership. And their farming practices reflect that. You know, they're plowing right over open swales. They're dumping into wetlands. They're cutting down trees because it's not their land. That lack of stewardship is what we have to fully address, because the moraine's ecology, the whole point of the plan is to protect, maintain, and enhance the ecological, hydrological integrity of the moraine. We can't do that when we continue to have these these farms in transition, where there is damage being done to the streams, to the groundwater, to the forests, to the biodiversity. We can't accomplish what we want to do.
The plan divided the other 92% into natural core areas, which cover about 38%, natural linkage areas, which cover 24%, and countryside, making up the last 30%. The designations each have numerous restrictions about what can occur on the land, but it is the allowances that are subverting the intent of the legislation in the first place. For example, one of the key assaults identified deals with infrastructure. Under the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, any transportation, infrastructure, or utility use may cross a hydrologically sensitive feature or a natural heritage feature, as long as the applicant can demonstrate that there is a need for that project and there are no reasonable alternatives. This means new roads, pipelines, and utilities are cutting a path straight through the moraine and will continue to do so to accommodate population growth both within and outside of the moraine. The Oak Ridges Moraine is so important because of its ecologically diverse landscapes that support a wide range of both common and rare species, but it's the moraine's role as a groundwater recharge and discharge area that makes it even more valuable. Not only for the 250,000 people who use it as a source of drinking water, but also for the 20 watersheds and 65 rivers that depend on these headwaters to replenish them. And it is the activities that are occurring on top of the moraine in locations where the groundwater is most vulnerable that worries the environmental watchdogs, one being the large-scale fill operations that pepper the moraine landscape.
This issue really came to light in the Lake Ridge Road in Scugog Township, where citizens noticed all of these trucks starting to go up and down Lake Ridge. And they put pressure on their municipality, who then ordered some testing, and it came back that there was, I believe, hydrocarbons in some of the samples that were taken. So here we have known contaminated fill coming in at an alarming rate. When you add contamination to a permeable environment like the Oak Ridges Moraine, where it's filled with sands and gravels, and that contamination, whether it's a salt contamination, whether it is these hydrocarbons or other kinds of contamination, as it gets into the groundwater system, that stays there. And it takes many hundreds of years for that to come through.
Another key assault is water grabbing, essentially the amount of water that is being siphoned from the moraine's aquifers.
We have to get stronger policies that really protect water from being siphoned off by some of these municipalities who may not be able to develop within the Moraine Plan because of the new policies, but who are in fact developing off the Oak Ridges Moraine and then using moraine waters. That completely subverts the whole intent of this policy. So again, pretty top assault. Sustainable livelihoods is another one of these that we feel is really, really important. It was never the intent of the plan in the first place, or the groups who worked here, to have farmers, to have business people, to have people not be able to make a living on the Oak Ridges Moraine.
One of the key objectives of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan is to protect, improve, and restore the ecological and hydrological integrity and functions of the moraine. The provincial government allotted $15 million to the Oak Ridges Moraine Foundation to help fulfill that mandate.
Since 2002, we've allocated 14.1 of the original $15 million, and we've leveraged an additional $35.8 million from our partners. So in fact, we now have $50 million worth of projects on the Oak Ridges Moraine. These projects range from land securement, land stewardship, education and outreach, work on research on the Oak Ridges Moraine, and also support for the Oak Ridges Moraine Trail.
The recent announcement by the provincial government that the ORMF would not receive any new funding due to budget constraints is a major setback to moraine protection and restoration.
One of our concerns is the fact that we have allocated the original $15 million. We have not been granting since 2009. Our board of directors made a decision that we would spend some of the remaining funds on assessing the effectiveness of the plan and looking at the impacts of the projects that we funded. So we've recently released 8 reports called Measuring Success on the Oak Ridges Moraine. The other thing that we did was we worked with the 9 conservation authorities on the Oak Ridges Moraine to assess the health of the moraine. We were happy to see that generally forest cover is not in bad shape on the Oak Ridges Moraine, but we still need to do some restoration of habitat with respect to forest interior. So those are looking at building up these really big blocks of forest on the Oak Ridges Moraine. We still need to look at protecting and restoring grassland habitat for a lot of grassland species of birds. And what we were really sad to see, unfortunately, is that stream health is still in bad shape on the Oak Ridges Moraine. So without keeping these assaults in check and without amending the legislation to fix them, that there's going to be continuous activities happening on the moraine that the legislation is not going to stop. And even after these activities do happen, what are we then going to do to restore the detrimental effects that these activities have had? And that's the role for the foundation. That's where we, with our funding, have provided funds to the groups who were doing the tree planting, doing the stream rehabilitation, educating landowners about why they shouldn't be doing certain activities. It's really pivotal that the province not walk away from the continued important work that needs to happen, and therefore we're continuing to request to the province that there be more funds provided for doing some of this restoration work that needs to happen.
The Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act was initially up for review in 2012, but that has been tabled until 2015, meaning that it'll be at least 4 years before any changes can be made to address the issues still threatening the moraine. Storm and its partners are asking that we contact our local members of parliament to let them know that the moraine can't wait 4 years and legislation needs to be addressed to protect it today. To learn more about the campaign, you can visit us online for more information at rogerstv.com/A Greener York.